The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. They believed they knew everything about the universe. They had mapped every star, counted every planet, and recorded every species that ever lived. Their records were perfect. Their knowledge was complete. And according to those records, the humans of Earth had been dead for 500 years. Ambassador Vexteron stood at the great window of the council station, looking out at the endless darkness of space. He was a Kelthari, a tall being with gray skin and 4 eyes that could see in every direction. Behind him, the other ambassadors talked and laughed. They were celebrating the 500th anniversary of what they called the Great Cleansing, 500 years ago. The Dominion Empire had decided that humans were too dangerous to live. The young species had only been in space for 200 years, but they were spreading too fast. They were too clever, too adaptable, too stubborn. The Dominion had seen many species rise and fall. They recognized the signs of a future threat, so they had destroyed Earth. Vexteron remembered the old recordings. The Dominion fleet had been massive. 10,000 warships had surrounded the small blue planet. The humans had fought back with everything they had, but their technology was too primitive. Their ships were too few. The battle had lasted only 3 days. When it was over, Earth was burning. The Dominion had not stopped there. They had hunted down every human colony, every ship, every station. They had been thorough. They had been complete. And when they were finished, they had announced to the galaxy that the human threat had been eliminated. The Galactic Council had done nothing to stop it. Some members had protested, but most had stayed silent. The Dominion was too powerful to challenge. And besides, many secretly agreed that the humans had been growing too fast. It was better this way, they told themselves. The galaxy would be more stable without the chaos that humans brought. Now, 500 years later, the Dominion Emperor himself was attending the celebration. Emperor Zhalmok was ancient, even by Dominion standards. He had personally ordered the attack on Earth. He considered it his greatest achievement. The celebration was being held in the Grand Hall of the Council Station. Representatives from over 300 species had gathered. They ate exotic foods. They drank rare wines. They congratulated each other on 5 centuries of peace and stability. Vexteron did not feel like celebrating. He had studied the old records about humans. He had watched their music, their art, their stories. He had seen something in them that the others had missed. There had been a fire in the human spirit, a determination that he had never seen in any other species. Sometimes late at night, he wondered if destroying them had been the right choice. But those thoughts were dangerous. He pushed them away and turned to join the celebration. That was when the alarms started. The sound was deafening. Red lights flashed across the station. The ambassadors stopped talking. Their drinks fell from their hands. Fear spread across their faces like a disease. Admiral Kethvior of the Dominion Navy rushed to the communication console. His scales had turned pale, a sign of extreme stress in his species. "Port," he shouted. "What is happening?" The voice that answered was shaking with terror. "Admiral, we have contacts." "Many contacts. They appeared from nowhere. They are surrounding the station." "How many ships?" the Admiral demanded. There was a long pause. When the voice spoke again, it was barely a whisper. "Thousands, Admiral. There are thousands of them." The great window of the council station showed only stars a moment ago. Now it showed something else. Ships. Massive ships. They filled the darkness like an army of giants. Their designs were unlike anything the council had ever seen. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Emperor Gilmok pushed his way to the front of the crowd. His old eyes studied the ships with growing confusion. "Whose fleet is this?" he demanded. "Which species dares to threaten the Galactic Council?" No one answered. No one knew. The ships matched no known design. They belonged to no recorded species. Then the message came. Every screen in the station flickered. Every speaker crackled, and a face appeared. It was a female face, with brown skin and dark eyes. She looked young, but there was something ancient in her gaze. Something that had been forged in fire and hardened by centuries of pain. She spoke in a language that had not been heard in 500 years. But the translation system still worked. They still remembered. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Human Federation," she said. Her voice was calm, cold, controlled. "We have returned." The Grand Hall fell into absolute silence. Ambassadors stared at the screens with disbelief. Some thought it was a joke. Some thought it was a trick. But deep in their hearts, they all knew the truth. The humans were back. Emperor Gelmok was the first to speak. His voice was filled with confusion and the beginnings of fear. "Impossible," he said. "We destroyed you. We destroyed all of you. Earth is gone. Your colonies are gone. Your species is extinct." Admiral Chen smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had waited a very long time for this moment. "You destroyed our home," she said. "You killed billions of our people. You thought you had one. You thought we were finished." She leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to burn through the screen. "You were wrong." The ambassadors began to panic. Some ran for the doors. Others called for their ships. The Dominion admiral shouted orders into his communicator, demanding that his fleet engage the human ships. But Admiral Chen raised her hand, and suddenly, all communication with the outside stopped. The human ships had taken control of everything. 500 years ago, you tried to wipe us from existence," Admiral Chen continued. "You failed. A few of us escaped. We hid. We rebuilt. We grew stronger. And we waited." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We waited for this day." Beckstorin watched the screen with a mixture of horror and fascination. He had been right. The fire he had seen in the old human records was still there. It had never gone out. It had only grown brighter. "What do you want?" Emperor Gilmok asked. His voice had lost its confidence. For the first time in his long life, he sounded afraid. Admiral Chen's answer was simple. It was direct, and it changed the galaxy forever. "We want justice," she said, "and we are prepared to fight every species in this galaxy to get it." As of this moment, the United Human Federation is at war with the Dominion Empire and every government that supported the genocide of our people. She stood tall, proud, unbroken. "We are humanity. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And we do not surrender." The screens went dark in the Grand Hall, chaos erupted. But above the noise, above the fear, one truth was clear. The galaxy would never be the same again. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Remembrance. The name was not an accident. Every ship in the human fleet had a name that carried meaning. Names like Never Forget, Second Dawn, and Children of Earth. These names reminded every human of where they came from and why they fought. The council station floated before her, surrounded by her fleet. Inside, hundreds of alien ambassadors were experiencing fear for the first time in their comfortable lives. Sarah felt no sympathy for them. They had watched her ancestors die and done nothing. They had celebrated the death of her species for 500 years. Now they would learn what that choice had cost them, but the war could wait for a few more hours. First, she needed to address her own people. The broadcast would reach every human ship, every human station, every human colony across the galaxy. It was time to tell the story that had been passed down through generations. The story of how humanity survived. Sarah activated the fleet-wide communication channel. Her face appeared on millions of screens. "My fellow humans," she began. "Today marks the end of our long exile. Today, we step out of the shadows and reclaim our place in the galaxy. But before we move forward, we must remember how we got here. We must remember the sacrifice of those who came before us." She took a deep breath and began the story, 500 years ago. When the Dominion fleet surrounded Earth, humanity's leaders knew the battle was lost. Their ships were outnumbered 100 to 1. Their weapons could barely scratch the enemy's shields. But humans had never been a species that accepted defeat easily. While the military fought to buy time, scientists and engineers worked on a desperate plan. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, they had been building something in secret. It was called Project Exodus. A fleet of ships equipped with experimental, faster-than-light drives that could jump further than any technology in the known galaxy. The ships were not warships. They were arcs. Each one could carry 50,000 people in cryogenic sleep. There were only 20 ships. It was not enough to save everyone. It was not even close to enough. But it was something. As Earth burned, as the colonies fell one by one, the 20 ships of Project Exodus escaped. They jumped into the unknown, traveling further than any human had ever gone before. They left the known galaxy behind and entered the dark space between galaxies, where no species had ever ventured. The journey took years. Many did not survive. 3 ships were lost to mechanical failures. 2 more were destroyed by unknown hazards in the void. But 15 ships made it through. 15 ships carrying 750,000 humans, the last survivors of their species. They found a small galaxy, hidden in the darkness. It had no name, so they called it New Eden. It had planets that could support life. It had resources that could be harvested. It had everything they needed to rebuild, but the survivors did not just want to rebuild. They wanted revenge. The first generation focused on survival. They established colonies. They grew food. They had children. They passed down the stories of Earth, the memories of what had been lost, the names of those responsible. The second generation focused on growth. They built cities. They developed industries. They expanded to every habitable world in New Eden. The third generation focused on preparation. They built shipyards. They trained soldiers. They developed weapons more advanced than anything the Dominion had ever seen. By the fourth generation, humanity had become something new. They were harder than their ancestors, more focused, more determined. Every child grew up knowing the story of Earth. Every child learned the names of the Dominion leaders who had ordered the genocide. Every child swore an oath to one day return and make things right. But they were patient. They knew they were not ready. The Dominion was still too powerful. The galaxy was still too united against them. So they waited. They watched. They prepared. Human scientists made breakthrough after breakthrough. They developed energy shields that could stop any weapon. They created ships that could jump instantly across vast distances. They built weapons that could crack planets in half. And they did it all in secret, hidden away in their tiny galaxy. Unknown to the rest of the universe, they also sent spies into the known galaxy. These brave men and women disguised themselves as members of other species, using advanced technology to change their appearance. They infiltrated governments. They gathered intelligence. They learned everything about their enemies. The spies reported that the galaxy had grown complacent. The Dominion was still powerful, but it had become lazy. The other species had forgotten how to fight. They believed they were safe. They believed the humans were gone forever. They were wrong. Admiral Chen paused in her broadcast. The weight of history pressed down on her shoulders. She was the culmination of 500 years of planning, sacrifice, and determination. Every generation had done its part. Now it was her turn. My great-great-grandmother was on one of those first ships, she said. She was 12 years old when Earth fell. She watched on a screen as her homeworld burned. She never forgot. She raised her children to never forget. And they raised their children the same way. Sarah's voice grew stronger. We are the children of Earth. We carry the memory of 10 billion dead in our hearts. We have spent 5 centuries preparing for this moment. And now, finally, we are ready. On the council station, Ambassador Vextron was watching the broadcast. The humans had hacked into every communication system in the station. They wanted everyone to hear this message. Vextron listened with growing amazement. He had always suspected that something about the human extinction story was wrong. The Dominion had been too confident, too certain. Now, he understood why. The humans had done the impossible. They had escaped the destruction of their species. They had hidden in the dark spaces of the universe. They had rebuilt from almost nothing. And they had grown powerful beyond imagination. He looked at the human ships surrounding the station. Each one was massive, easily 5 times the size of a Dominion battleship. Their designs were elegant and deadly. They radiated power. How did they do it? Whispered the ambassador next to him, a small creature from a peaceful world. How did they become so strong so fast? Vextron thought he understood. Anger, he said softly. Humans channel their emotions into action. The Dominion gave them the greatest source of anger imaginable. They killed their world. They killed their people. And then they gave them 500 years to turn that anger into power. On the screen, Admiral Chen was finishing her message. The Dominion thought they were eliminating a threat, she said. Instead, they created one. They could have left us alone. They could have let us grow and join the galactic community in peace. But they chose war. They chose genocide. And now they will face the consequences. She stood tall, her uniform crisp, her eyes burning with determination. To the people of the galaxy I say this: we do not seek war with everyone. We seek justice. Those species that took no part in our destruction have nothing to fear from us. But the Dominion and its allies will answer for what they did. Every leader who voted for our extinction, every soldier who carried out the orders, every politician who stayed silent while innocent people died, they will all face judgment. The message ended. The screens went dark. In the Grand Hall, Emperor Jilmok stood frozen. For 500 years, he had celebrated the destruction of humanity as his greatest achievement. Now that achievement had come back to destroy him. He finally understood the truth. Killing the humans had not eliminated a threat. It had created the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known, and there was no escape from what was coming. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began 3 hours after Admiral Chen's broadcast. The Grand Hall was filled with chaos. Ambassadors shouted at each other. Accusations flew like weapons. Old alliances crumbled in minutes. The unity that had held the galaxy together for centuries was falling apart. At the center of it all stood Emperor Jilmok, trying desperately to maintain control. "We must unite," he shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. "The humans are the enemy of all civilized species. We must stand together against them." But his words found few supporters. Ambassador Crixnell of the Vethrani Collective stepped forward. The Vethrani were a reptilian species known for their honesty. They had been one of the few voices that spoke against the destruction of Earth 500 years ago. Their protests had been ignored. "You ask us to unite with you?" Crixnell said, his voice cold. 500 years ago, my people begged you to spare the humans. We warned you that genocide was wrong. We told you it would have consequences. You laughed at us. You threatened to do to our worlds what you did to Earth. Emperor Gilmok's face twisted with anger. That is ancient history. What matters now is survival. Ancient history. Crixnell let out a harsh laugh. Tell that to the humans. They have clearly not forgotten. He turned to face the other ambassadors. My government has authorized me to make an announcement. The Vethrani Collective will not fight against the humans. If they wish to destroy the Dominion, we will not stand in their way. The hall erupted in shouting. Some called Crixnell a traitor. Others called him brave. Emperor Jilmok looked like he wanted to kill the Vethrani ambassador with his bare hands. But Crixnell was not finished. Furthermore, he continued, we invite any other species that oppose the human genocide to join us in neutrality. The humans said they seek justice, not conquest. I believe them. I suggest the rest of you consider carefully which side of history you want to be on. Over the next hour, 17 other species announced their neutrality. They were mostly smaller powers, species that had always felt uncomfortable with the Dominion's methods. But their departure still weakened the coalition against humanity. From the Bridge of the Remembrance, Admiral Chen watched the proceedings with satisfaction. The galaxy was dividing itself, just as she had planned. Her spies had spent years identifying which species might be sympathetic to humanity's cause. The cracks in the Galactic Alliance had been there for centuries. All she had done was give them a reason to break wide open. Her first officer, Captain Marcus Webb, stood beside her. He was a large man, with a scarred face and tired eyes. His family had served in the human military for 15 generations, going all the way back to the survivors of Earth. 18 species have declared neutrality so far, he reported. Another 6 are debating the issue in their home governments. The Dominion Alliance is smaller than it was this morning. Good, but not good enough. We need more. She opened a communication channel to the council station. Once again, her face appeared on every screen in the Grand Hall. I see you are having difficulty making decisions, she said. Allow me to help. The ambassadors fell silent. All eyes turned to the screens. I am going to give you a choice, Chen continued. In 24 hours, my fleet will begin its attack on Dominion space. Any species that wishes to remain neutral may withdraw from this station and return to their homeworlds. You will not be harmed. Your ships will not be attacked. We will leave you in peace. She paused to let this sink in. However, she added, her voice growing harder, any species that chooses to fight alongside the Dominion will be considered our enemy. Your fleets will be destroyed. Your military installations will be eliminated. You will share the Dominion's fate. Emperor Jilmok stepped forward, his courage briefly returning. You cannot defeat the combined might of the galaxy. We have 10,000 warships. You have nothing, Chen interrupted. Your technology is 5 centuries behind ours. Your tactics are outdated. Your soldiers have grown soft from peace. We have spent 500 years preparing for this moment while you celebrated and grew fat. She leaned forward, her eyes like ice. Let me show you what you are facing. The main screen in the Grand Hall changed to show a view of space. In the distance, a small moon orbited a gas giant. It was an uninhabited rock, useful only for mining. Watch carefully, Chen said. A single beam of light shot from one of the human ships. It crossed the vast distance in an instant and struck the moon. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the entire moon began to glow. Cracks spread across its surface, pouring out light like blood from a wound. And then, with terrible beauty, the moon exploded. The Grand Hall was silent. Ambassadors stared at the screen with open mouths. They had just witnessed a moon destroyed by a single shot from a single ship. That weapon is called a Nova Lance, Chen explained calmly. Every battleship in my fleet is equipped with one. We have 300 battleships present. We have 2,000 more waiting in reserve. She smiled coldly. Still think you can defeat us? Emperor Jilmok's confidence shattered. He had ruled the Dominion for 1,000 years because his empire had the most powerful military in the galaxy. Now he understood that his power was an illusion. The humans had spent 5 centuries preparing. They had built weapons beyond anything he could imagine, and they were angry. 24 hours, Chen repeated. Choose wisely. The screen went dark. In the chaos that followed, more species declared their neutrality. Some did so out of principle. Others did so out of fear. Within 12 hours, the Dominion Alliance had lost nearly half its members. Those who remained were either too proud to back down, too loyal to the Dominion, or too afraid of what would happen if they switched sides. They gathered around Emperor Gilmok, promising their fleets and their soldiers to the coming war. Admiral Kethvor, commander of the Dominion Navy, presented their battle plan. It was a solid strategy based on centuries of military experience. They would combine their fleets, establish defensive positions, and try to wear down the human forces through attrition. But Vextran, watching from the corner of the room, knew it would not work. The humans had shown a willingness to be patient that no other species possessed. They had waited 500 years for this moment. They would not be defeated by simple defensive tactics. He made his decision. When no one was looking, he slipped away from the Grand Hall and found a private communication terminal. He sent a message to his homeworld telling them to declare neutrality immediately. Then he sent a second message, this one to the human fleet. Admiral Chen, he said quietly, my name is Vextorin. I opposed the destruction of Earth 500 years ago. My voice was ignored, but my conscience never forgot. I wish to help you. I have information about the Dominion's defenses and their battle plans. If you give me safe passage, I will tell you everything I know. He did not know if the humans would trust him. He did not know if they would even respond. But he knew that he could no longer stand by and do nothing. His ancestors had been silent while innocents died. He would not make the same mistake. Hours later, a human shuttle arrived to take him away. As he left the council station, Vexterin looked back one last time. The great symbol of galactic unity was about to become a battlefield. The old order was ending and something new was being born. The war lasted 3 weeks. In that short time, everything changed. Admiral Chen had not been bluffing about human technology. The Dominion's mighty fleet, the terror of the galaxy for 10,000 years, was swept aside like leaves in a storm. Their weapons could not penetrate human shields. Their shields could not stop human weapons. Battles that should have lasted days ended in hours. The first major engagement happened at HFY Station. It's the largest military base in Dominion space. Admiral Kethvier himself commanded the defense. Leading 2,000 warships against the human attack force, the humans sent only 50 ships. Captain Marcus Webb led the assault. His battleship, the Righteous Fury, was the first to engage. The Dominion opened fire with everything they had: missiles, plasma beams, kinetic weapons. The space around Webb's ship filled with explosions. When the light cleared, the Righteous Fury was undamaged. Its shields had absorbed every attack without strain. Webb's voice came through the communication channel, calm and professional. All ships engage at will. Standard formation. Minimal casualties. The 50 human ships moved forward. They fired their weapons with precise accuracy, targeting engines and weapons systems rather than crew quarters. Dominion ships went dark one after another. Disabled but not destroyed. Admiral Kethvior watched in horror as his fleet fell apart. He had dedicated his entire life to military service. He had fought in dozens of battles. He had never lost. Now he understood that he had never truly been tested. All ships retreat, he ordered desperately. Fall back to secondary positions. But there was no retreat. The human ships were too fast, too maneuverable. They cut off every escape route. Within 2 hours, the entire Dominion fleet was disabled. 2,000 ships captured with minimal loss of life. Admiral Chen had given strict orders. Kill as few as possible. Destroy as little as possible. This was not a war of extermination. This was a war of justice. There was a difference. Kethvior was brought before Chen in chains. He expected to be executed. Instead, she offered him a chair and a glass of water. "You are probably wondering why you are still alive," she said. Kethvior nodded slowly. "I commanded the fleet that destroyed your colonies. I killed millions of your people. By your own laws, I deserve death." "Yes," Chen agreed. "You do. But I am not interested in what you deserve. I am interested in ending this war with as little bloodshed as possible." Oh. She leaned forward. "You are a respected military leader. Your soldiers trust you. If you tell them to stand down, they will listen. Want me to help you defeat my own empire? I want you to help me save your people from a fight they cannot win." Chun's voice was firm but not cruel. "We could destroy the Dominion completely. We have the power to burn every world, kill every soldier, eliminate your entire species the way you tried to eliminate ours. But that is not who we are." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the captured fleet. 500 years ago, your people committed an act of terrible evil. They murdered billions of innocents. They tried to wipe an entire species from existence. We have every right to do the same to you." She turned back to face him. "But we choose not to. We choose to be better than you were." Kethvior sat in silence for a long moment. He thought about all the things he had been taught about humans. They were savages, he had been told. Animals. A threat to civilized species everywhere. But the woman standing before him showed more mercy than any Dominion leader he had ever known. "What are your terms?" he asked finally. Chen handed him a document. "Complete surrender of all Dominion military forces. Arrest and trial of all leaders who participated in the genocide against humanity. Payment of reparations to help rebuild human worlds. And a formal apology broadcast to every corner of the galaxy." Kethvior read the terms carefully. They were harsh, but not impossible. More importantly, they offered the Dominion people a chance to survive. If I refuse, then the war continues. More of your soldiers die. More of your worlds fall. Eventually, you lose anyway, but with much more suffering. Chen's voice was matter-of-fact. I am offering you a chance to end this quickly. I suggest you take it. Keth Viewer made his decision. He took the communication device Chen offered him and broadcast a message to all remaining Dominion forces. This is Admiral Keth Viewer, he said, his voice heavy with defeat. I am ordering all units to cease fire and surrender to human forces. The war is over. We have lost. Across Dominion space, ships lowered their weapons. Soldiers laid down their arms. The most powerful empire in the galaxy fell in less than a month. But Emperor Gilmok refused to surrender. He had fled to his homeworld, the ancient planet of Gil Prime. There, in a fortress that had stood for 50,000 years, he gathered his most loyal followers for a final stand. Admiral Chen led the assault personally. The Remembrance descended through the atmosphere, flanked by 100 smaller ships. Below them, the fortress bristled with weapons. It was the most heavily defended position in Dominion. Space it fell in 6 minutes. Human soldiers poured through the breached walls. They were equipped with armor that made them nearly invincible, weapons that could punch through any defense. They moved with discipline and precision. Capturing every defender without killing a single one, they found Emperor Gilmok in his throne room. He was alone. His advisors had abandoned him. His guards had surrendered. He sat on his ancient throne, waiting for death. Chen walked into the room and stopped before him. She studied the creature who had ordered the death of her species. He was old, broken, pathetic. Gilmok whispered, "Kill me. Finish your revenge." Chen shook her head. "Death would be too easy for you. You ordered the murder of billions. You deserve to face judgment for what you did." She gestured to her soldiers. "Take him. He will stand trial before the entire galaxy." As Gilmok was led away in chains, he looked back at Chen with confusion in his ancient eyes. "Why?" he asked. "Why spare me? Why spare any of us? We destroyed everything you loved." Chen's answer was simple. "Because we are human. We fight when we must. We show strength when we need to. But we do not become monsters to defeat monsters. That is what separates us from you." The trial was broadcast across every world in the galaxy. For weeks, witnesses testified about the horrors of the human genocide. Recordings were shown. Evidence was presented. The galaxy was forced to confront the truth of what had been done 5 centuries ago. In the end, Gilmok and 47 other Dominion leaders were found guilty. They were sentenced to life imprisonment on a distant world. They would spend their remaining years reflecting on their crimes. Many humans wanted harsher punishment. They wanted executions. They wanted the Dominion to suffer as they had suffered. But Admiral Chen held firm. "We did not survive 500 years to become like our enemies," she told her people. "We are better than that. We have always been better than that. That is why we won." The war was over, but the work of building a new galaxy was just beginning. 1 year after the war ended, a new organization was born. It was called the Galactic Alliance, and it replaced the old council that had failed so badly. This time, humanity would help lead it. The ceremony was held on the world that had once been called Gale Prime. The Dominion's ancient capital had been renamed Hope. It seemed fitting. The galaxy was entering a new era. And hope was exactly what everyone needed. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the podium, looking out at representatives from over 400 species. Some had been enemies just a year ago. Others had been neutral observers. A few had been allies from the beginning. Now they were all gathered together, ready to build something new. 1 year ago, Chen began, humanity emerged from exile. We were angry. We were hurt. We wanted revenge for what had been done to us. And we had the power to take that revenge. We could have burned the galaxy to ashes. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the crowd. But we chose a different path. We chose justice over vengeance. We chose mercy over cruelty. We chose to show the galaxy what humanity truly stands for. In the audience, Vextron listened with quiet pride. He had become humanity's first true ally among the old powers. After the war, he had worked tirelessly to help rebuild trust between humans and other species. It had not been easy. There was still much anger and suspicion on all sides, but progress was being made. Slowly, carefully, the galaxy was healing. Chen continued her speech. The old Galactic Council failed because it valued order over justice. It allowed genocide to happen because stopping it was too difficult, too inconvenient. The powerful did what they wanted, and the weak suffered. She raised her head high. The new alliance will be different. We have written a new charter, one that guarantees the rights of all species, regardless of their size or power. Never again will a people face extinction while the galaxy watches in silence. The new charter had been debated for months. Humans had insisted on strong protections against genocide and unprovoked aggression. Other species had worried about human domination. In the end, they had reached a compromise that everyone could accept. The alliance would be governed by a council, with representatives from every member species. Decisions would require broad agreement, not just the approval of the most powerful. An independent court would judge crimes against sentient beings, and a combined fleet, drawn from all member species, would enforce the law. It was not a perfect system. Nothing ever was. But it was better than what had come before. Admiral Chen finished her speech to thunderous applause. As she stepped down from the podium, she was met by Captain Marcus Webb. He had been promoted to admiral after the war, commanding the human forces that now helped patrol the galaxy. "Good speech," he said. Chen allowed herself a small smile. It needed to be said. There are still many who doubt us. Many who fear what we might become. Can you blame them? We showed up with enough firepower to destroy civilization. Some fear is natural. Chen nodded. She understood that fear. It was why she had worked so hard to show restraint during the war. Why she had insisted on mercy for the Dominion. Why she now spoke of cooperation and partnership rather than domination. Humanity had the power to rule the galaxy by force. But that was not who they were. That was not who they wanted to be. Later that day, Chen attended a smaller ceremony. This one was not broadcast to the galaxy. This one was private, personal, sacred. They gathered on a quiet hill outside the city. Humans only. Thousands of them, standing in silence under an alien sky. Before them stood a simple monument. It was a pillar of white stone, carved with the names of every human who had died in the genocide 500 years ago. There were billions of names. The pillar stretched toward the sky, impossibly tall, impossibly heavy with loss. Chen stepped forward and placed her hand on the cold stone. She thought of her great-great-grandmother, who had escaped Earth as a child. She thought of all the generations that had followed, carrying the memory of that terrible day. She thought of everyone who had dreamed of this moment, but had not lived to see it. "We did it," she whispered. "We survived. We came back. We won." A single tear rolled down her cheek. It was the first time she had cried since the war began. Around her, other humans stood in silence, paying their respects to the dead. Some wept openly. Others stood stone-faced, lost in private grief. But all of them felt the same thing. A mixture of pride and sorrow, triumph and loss. They had won. But victory did not erase the pain of what they had lost. The ceremony ended at sunset. As the crowd dispersed, Chen remained by the monument. She was joined by Vextron, who approached with respectful hesitation. "Admiral," he said quietly, "I hope I am not intruding." Chen shook her head. "No, you are always welcome here. You proved yourself a friend when we had few." Vextron stood beside her, looking up at the endless names carved into the stone. "I never knew any of them," he said, "but I feel as though I did. I have studied human history, human culture, human art. Your species has produced such remarkable things. The galaxy is poorer for what was lost." Now Chen nodded slowly. "We lost so much. Not just people, but knowledge, art, music, stories. Thousands of years of culture, gone in a single day. She took a deep breath. But we kept the most important thing. We kept our spirit. Our determination, our belief that we could survive anything if we refused to give up. That is what I admire most about your species, Vextron said. Other species would have surrendered to despair. You turned your pain into purpose. He stood in silence for a long moment. What happens now? Vextron asked finally. Chen turned to look at him. Now we build. We have a new alliance to guide, a new order to create. We have centuries of work ahead of us, and Earth. The question hung in the air. Earth, the homeworld. The place where humanity began. It was still there, a burned and scarred world, slowly healing from the wounds inflicted 5 centuries ago. We are already working on it, Chen said. It will take generations to restore Earth to what it was. Maybe longer, but we will do it. Someday humans will walk under Earth's sky again. Someday we will go home. She looked back at the monument one last time. That is what we owe to them, she said softly. To everyone whose name is written here, we owe them a future worth living in. A galaxy where what happened to us can never happen again. Vextron placed his hand over his heart, a gesture of deep respect among his people. And let us build that future together, he said. Admiral Chen smiled. It was not the cold, dangerous smile she had worn during the war. It was something warmer, something hopeful. Together, she agreed. They walked away from the monument as darkness fell. Behind them, the names of the dead glittered in the starlight. 10 billion souls, finally at rest. Humanity had returned from the edge of extinction. They had faced their enemies and won. They had shown mercy when they could have shown cruelty. And now they were helping to build a better galaxy. One where no species would ever again face what they had faced. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and humanity was ready to explore it all. Not as conquerors, not as victims, but as survivors. As builders, as partners, as humans, the story of Earth was not over. It was only beginning again.